Assalamu alaikum. Today you will learn how to handle dynamic web request using servlets in Java. Before moving on to any of the further topics, let me inform you that this is the fourth tutorial in the series of JSP and Servlets. So if you have not gone through the previous tutorials, I highly recommend you to go through the previous tutorials first and then come back to this tutorial. So without any further ado, let's get started. I have opened my Eclipse over here. So we are going to create a new project and demonstrate how to handle a dynamic request. So I'll do a right click over here, go to new and dynamic web project. I'll name this project as dynamic request and click on next. Again click on next, and this time we have to select this checkbox which says generate a web.xml deployment descriptor. Now if you have been following my tutorials, in the very first tutorial I have already explained you what is a deployment descriptor or a web.xml. Web.xml and deployment descriptor are the same thing. I have already explained you before. So let's move on and click on finish. As you can see, our project is ready over here. I'll expand this main web app folder, and over here in web.inf you can see there is a file called web.xml. If I open this file, so this is the deployment descriptor where we will do some configurations later for dynamic request. So for now, we are going to create a project in which the user is going to input two numbers and we will return the addition of those numbers. Very simple. So to create the front end, I'll create a new file over here. Go to others, HTML file. I'll name this file as home.html. Click on finish. So let's make some input fields for the user to input those numbers. In order to do that, I'll create a form tag. Input type I'll name this field as num1, and similarly I need one more input field, so I'll just copy this and paste it once more. I'll name this field as num2, and finally a submit button over here, and since the user is going to input numbers, so we have to change this type from text to number. Same goes for second input. So before moving on, let's see how does this looks like on a browser. So I'm going to start this, right click over here, run on server. As you can see, the browser has automatically started, and if I click over here and input some numbers, and if I click on submit, I am expecting 2 plus 5, I should get 7. But right now we are not getting anything. This is because we have not yet written the commands for that. So to write some code, we need Java class. So I'll go to my Java folder over here and create a package first. I'll name this package as com.examples and click on finish. Inside this package, we need a servlet to handle that request to add those numbers. So I'll create a servlet over here and name this servlet as add servlet and click on finish. As you can see over here, this is a simple empty class, but it's not a servlet. In order to make it a servlet, we need to extend this with a class called HTTP servlets. And after extending any class with HTTP servlet, we also have to override some methods. There are many methods that we can override, but for simplicity, I'm going to override just one method for now, and we'll study the rest of the methods later. So the name of the method that we are going to override is this service method. I'll delete this auto-generated text over here, and if you can see this method, it takes two arguments, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. These two are the objects that it takes. What this servlet is going to do now, it is going to take the input from the user and add those two numbers and then return the response into the browser. Just three simple steps. First of all, we need to take the input from the browser. How do we do that? We do that by request object. Request.get parameter. This method takes the parameter from the browser. But what is the name of the parameter? Well, the name of the parameter is whatever we have set over here. There are two parameters, num1 and num2. So I'll go back on my servlet and num1. We need to store it into an integer type variable. So int a is equals to this. Since it is an object type, we also have to parse this into an integer. So how do we do that? Integer dot parse int and one bracket over here. Similarly, I'll do this for num2 as well and rename this to integer b. Finally, I'll add these two integers because that's what we want, right? For now, I'm going to delete this line over here and return the output, which is C. So how do we return it? Of course, in console, we know it is system.out.println. But how do we print the output onto the browser? We do this with the help of response object. Response dot, there is a method called get writer dot println. So whatever we type into this method will get printed onto the web browser. I'll say sum is C. Save this and now let's see how does this works on the browser. Right click, run as, run on server. Yes, restart the server. Server has restarted. I'll put some numbers over here and let's see if it is working or not. Oh, it's again not working. Why is that? It is giving us error. So what is the error? The error is, if you can see over here, we have not mentioned anything in the action command. So how does this works? Whenever a user clicks on the submit button, the control goes to the action command. In action command, generally a web page is mentioned over here so that when a user clicks on the submit button, he is redirected to that web page. But here the user is not asking for any web page. He is just asking to add two numbers. Those two numbers can be any numbers, right? So what do we do over here? How to handle such type of dynamic request? If it would have been a specific web page request like we did in the previous tutorials, then we had created some web page and returned that back to the client. But here the client is not asking for a web page. The client is asking for the output for the given input. So how do we handle such type of request? We handle such type of request with the help of deployment descriptor or web.xml. So we'll go to this file over here and we need to create some configuration tags over here. Do not worry about these tags. I'll explain them to you later. So we need to create some configuration tags over here. Those tags are, well, there are two tags to configure such type of request. Those tags are servlet and servlet mapping tags. Inside servlet tags, we again have two tags, that is servlet name and the second one is servlet class. Inside servlet mapping tag also we have two similar tags which are servlet name and URL pattern. In servlet name we can write any name, but those two names should be the same in servlet tab and servlet mapping tag. Why is that? I'll explain you in detail in this tutorial. So for now I'll name this addition. And in servlet class, you need to mention the full class path of your servlet. In the servlet class tag, we have to mention our servlet name along with the package name. So if you can see on the left hand side, we have our servlet right over here, which is inside our package called com.examples. So I'll simply write that one, com.examples dot name of the servlet, add servlet, right? And in URL pattern, what do we do? I'll go to my form action over here and say add. Therefore, here also I'll say add. I'll explain how this is working after we run this project. Save everything, and let's see now if our project is working fine or not. So I'll do right click, run as, run on server, restart the server. So I'll input some numbers over here, 2, and this time let's say 8. Submit. The sum is 10. As you can see, we got our output right over here. So let me explain you how this is all working. First of all, the user inputs some number in these two fields, and when he clicks on the submit button, the control goes to the add command right over here. Now the control looks that, is there any web page called add? Well, we don't have any web page with that name. So now what does the control do? The control will go to web.xml and looks up that, hey, whether you have any mapping for that add web page. So it scans whole web.xml, and if it is able to find a mapping right over here, it get hold of the servlet name and goes to the servlet tag over here with the same name and looks up the class for the servlet, which is com.examples.servlet, and then it goes to the servlet right over here. When it goes to the servlet, it executes the command whatever we have written in here and gives us the output. So this is how the project works. Now let's understand what does this code means. So I will just uncomment this code, and in order to understand this, so if you have been following my tutorials, I have already explained you a URL is nothing but a path to a particular file in a particular application. So the structure of URL is always like this: HTTP and the application name, which is right over here in the Tomcat, slash the file name that we want inside that application. Now what if we are not mentioning any file at the end of the URL, we are only mentioning the application? Then what will happen? Obviously it will give us an error. So to avoid such kind of conditions, we have some default actions right over here. It says whenever a user requests for only the application, means the user does not request for any particular file, then one of these files would be displayed to the user. Since we don't have any of these files index or default, so let me just go ahead and create one of these files. I'll go to new and others, HTML, and let's name it index.html, and in here I will open a h2 tag and say save this. So now let me just run this application. Right click, run as, run on server. You can see this is working fine, but what if the user has not mentioned the file name over here, he has just mentioned the URL. So as we have already handled this case, that whenever the user is not requesting for any particular file, we will return the user one of these files if it is present in our project. So just now we have created this file, and it should return that file. As you can see, the user is not requesting for any particular file. Then the control goes to the web.xml and looks up that, hey, the user has not requested for any particular file, so let me display one of these files. And it looks up into the project that if we have any of these files or not, and we do have this file, so it returns the output on the browser. There you go. This is a very simple web application that handles dynamic request using servlets. So now you can handle any type of request, whether it is a static request or a dynamic request, by creating a servlet and handling the request based upon the code written in that servlet. So your homework would be create a form like this, which takes 2 input from the user. Those 2 input would be the 2 sides of the right angle triangle, and when the user clicks on the submit button, he should get the 3rd side of that triangle, basically the Pythagoras theorem. So let me give you a hint how you should do that. Instead of the logic to add 2 numbers, you should add the logic to find the 3rd side of the right angle triangle using Pythagoras theorem, right? So let me know if you are able to do that in the comment section, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.